Identifying need. Again, I mentioned that, it's hard. Looking around the community and being aware. I am sometimes the most oblivious person in the world to my own community needs. I sometimes just don't get it. I subscribe to a local app called Nextdoor. Do you all use Nextdoor around here? Nextdoor takes a geographical area around your house, and we share lost dog, lost cat, lost this. Did you see this person wandering through, so on and so forth? It has helped me become more aware of my own community. It's helped me understand that I live in a community where there are sexual predators housed in my community. Okay, it's good for me to be aware. Maybe to form connection to them. It's helpful for me to understand who they are and to voice things that are important to me and my family. So understanding what need is all about. Does your community have needs? As a church, I chaired the elder board at my church for a while. We went out trying to figure out how to form connection to community and offered free meals. My church happens to be in a very affluent part of Salt Lake City, on the east bench of Salt Lake City. Nobody needed them to be fed. That was not a need. We completely missed. I mean, everybody likes a free lunch every now and again, but this was not that crowd. Matt's church, whether he described the Genesis Project church, completely different group of people. A lot of people coming out of prison halfway houses, prostitution, wrong side of the railroad tracks, as far as we would understand. Their needs are completely different. So understanding both internally and surrounding the church, what are the specific community needs? And looking for brokenness. Using the building as a ministry tool. So how do we do this in a meaningful way? And I can tell you, there are needs everywhere. You may say that we don't have needs, but people have needs. One of the automatics, and we're going to go through a litany of some of the things here. One of the automatics that churches are sort of given a hall pass on is childcare. They are trusted until they can't be trusted. If you do childcare well, that's great. But you're given the pass on childcare and senior care right off the bat. Churches are known for this. They're also known for doing childcare in a really poor way. Childcare can oftentimes become a point of friction for a church, where they say, well, we've got these 2 or 3 rooms over here that we use for pre-K kids on church on Sunday mornings. We're going to start a pre-K program. So they start the pre-K program. They set up an administration. They set up all the things that are necessary to support a pre-K program. And they find that with 2 or 3 classrooms built to the wrong sizes for the codes that are now being required, is that they end up with these odd assortments of teacher-student ratios, and they're almost always money losers. So financially, the infighting starts. I can tell you so many times that I've gone into a situation and I'll ask them, do you guys have a child care? Yes, we got it, but we're thinking about getting rid of it. No, we're not. Yes, we are. No, we're not. Yes, we are. Infighting about whether or not this is really to be done or not. Some people justify the loss financially from the pre-K program by saying, well, it's a ministry. Of course we're going to lose money. Child care can be done well. Heather, raise your hand. Heather's with Learning Care Group out of Detroit. How many of you all? 900 plus facilities, 8 different brands. Learning Care Group is an organization that does child care financially really well, and they pair with us on the spiritual side with the churches that we work with. There is a right way and a wrong way to do child care. Your job is to connect to the families that will commit their kids to come to this location. It is not to run a pre-K program. There are people that are in the community, like Learning Care Group, that will do that to a much better extent, in a better way, while you attend to forming connection. We did one over in Juneau Beach. The pastor there said, yeah, we've been running a pretty successful child care program. Financially, it was pretty dodgy. But he said, every morning I go out as a pastor and stand at the front with an umbrella if it's raining. If it's not raining, I just stand out there and help mom and dad in with the kids. I've gotten to know every family that brings their kids in just by getting in the path of people that come in. We have these anecdotal conversations. They know who I am. Believe it or not, they show up to church. There's a pastor that gets the importance of forming connection to people coming in. Another one that's actually out in Ogden, Utah, that Dan Cook started on every Friday night. The church that's also housed in the pre-K center has a date night for the parents. Date night is basically the parents are both working, otherwise the kids wouldn't be in pre-K programs. And the parents are working, so on Friday night they offer to the mom and dads the opportunity for free care for their children while they go out and have a date together. So the kids are fed dinner that night, they watch a movie, they do some games, activities, so on and so forth in the building, which is equipped for that sort of thing. And mom and dad then are treated to a night out without the, gosh, when my kids were little, it was like 50 cents an hour for babysitting. I heard the rate's gone up. It's like minimum wage now, isn't it? Like $15 an hour or something like that. It's crazy, crazy numbers. So besides the date, they have to afford the child care. Well, this offers that to them. So the church is forming connection to mom and dad. When you have pre-K centers too, and you start to get into the lives of people that are bringing their kids in, you're going to realize that you're going to face every social problem our society has to offer. Alcoholism, split families, four-parent families, all those issues exist for kids that are coming to the daycare. If the church is equipped to be ready to help them, to come alongside them, it's an opportunity for ministry. But you got to do it well. You got to have the right space. You got to have the student-teacher ratio. You have to have the spaces sized properly. What works for a code, Heather's back there nodding her head because she's seen us screw this up so many times. What works for infants doesn't work for 2-year-olds, doesn't work for 4-year-olds, doesn't work for 5+. You've got to have the ratios right. Otherwise, if you're trying to put a teacher in there and you've got half the number of kids that ratio allows you to have, you're going to lose money in that room. So it's important to think about that. Sometimes it means that you have to amp up the size of the rooms, not just to meet the codes for pre-K. Church doesn't need to worry about those codes, by the way. You can pack them in deep. Nobody on Sunday morning is going to come to your church and say, you got too many kids in this room. It's a fire code violation. Get these kids out of the room. Or a health code violation. That doesn't happen in churches yet. It doesn't happen. But on Monday morning, they will be there, and they will check. 35 square feet per child for this room, 50 square feet per child this room. It's important to attend to those kind of things. Community event centers is another one that you can do. You can offer the building to be used as a community event center. Matt's not in the room right now. I think Matt came into the Genesis Project, Hub 801, a for-profit event center, and over the course of 3 years took over the ownership and operation of Hub 801. So their church was holding community center events in that building, something in the neighborhood of about 111 events a year. That was helping the bottom line, but it was also enabling them to connect to people that were flowing through their building from the community for whatever the issue was. Sometimes it was a corporate event. Cannondale Bicycles was in there for 3 days holding their corporate center events. They introduced the F-35 out of that building. From Hill Air Force Base, they had the government in there for a week doing their types of events. We've had quinceaneras and weddings and so on and so forth. And so those kinds of events can be held because the kinds of space that the community is looking for those kind of events works perfectly for the same kind of space that's needed by the church on Sunday mornings and throughout the rest of the week. So the question is how does that happen in the best way? We'll get into that. Eric will get into that a little bit later on. Cafe in third place is important. As you walked in this morning, you walked into what we call third place. Has anybody heard the term third place before? You've heard that? Okay, so yeah, of course, Jeff. I would have been disappointed if you didn't raise your hand. Third place is, it comes out of the retail culture. Baby boomers largely formed a relationship around first and second place, home and work, home and work. Makes sense. Baby boomers as a culture were hard workers, overworkers. The younger people, the millennials, will tell you they're overly committed to their jobs. Workaholics. It's true. I got out of graduate school in 1982. I immediately started working 80, 90-hour weeks for the first 5 or 6 years of my career. For the first 3 years, I was told, because I was an intern, get back to work. But as time went on, I developed that culture of working crazy. That doesn't happen with my millennials, by the way. If they have to work a 45-hour week, I've got people at my desk wondering what's going on with our company. Okay, time to hire more people. It's a different culture. It's a different way of thinking. So our generation and those older than us and those just after us largely formed a relationship around home and work. Younger people have come about this notion of creating third place or where they go for community. Ironically, this is what's happened in my life is in 1996, I went to Promise Keepers in 1996 with people from my church. And from that, we started having accountability group on Saturday morning at 7 o'clock. It's 23 years later, I still meet 7 o'clock on Saturday mornings with the same 4 guys that I have with 23 years. They're my accountability group. We meet in a coffee shop down the road, common to our neighborhood. That is our third place. That is where we gather together to pray for one another, to hear about our issues, our concerns, so on and so forth. It is where we've incorporated others and spun out groups. It is third place for us. That is where community happens. Well, churches have figured out that we can create honest-to-goodness meeting space, incorporation space, where the community is incorporated into who we are. When somebody comes through those doors, I'm sure you have people strategically positioned to greet them, to let them know who we are as a group. They come through the front door, and we want to get to know them. Obviously, that's going to happen in some form or fashion around that counter that's out there. That counter, by the way, is designed to go away. It's got 2 little bolts on each side. It's got some casters on it, and it's rolled out of there. That room can be used for completely different purposes. It can be used as a place to have a lunch together, or a dinner, or a meal, or whatever it is, or a speaking event. One we did in Olathe, Kansas, every Friday night they turn their third place into a place where they hold a acoustic concert series that they do on Friday nights in Olathe. It's become a place where people can invite their friends in for a bluegrass concert. It has nothing to do with church. All it is getting them through the front door and getting them to feel comfortable in the place that I worship on Sunday mornings. There's no specific outreach on Friday nights. It's just a really good room for acoustic music. So very important for us to think about. Very important for us to think about the way that we offer coffee. You know, I thought 10, 15 years ago, when you started to see these barista-style coffee things being introduced into our churches, this is going to go away. This is a fad. You know, it's like family life centers back in the 80s and the 90s. Everybody wanted a family life center. That's kind of gone by the wayside because kids mostly do things differently now. They don't come to church to play basketball unless you live in Indiana, then they still do that. They come to church and they play video games, or they interact in a different way through social media. So it's a different situation. I thought coffee bars would come and go. They're not going away. We're hooked. I stopped at Starbucks this morning. I needed a jolt. My coffee in the hotel was like a brown crayon dipped in hot water. It's terrible. I had to go get the real deal. We're hooked. We need to extend ourselves in the way that our culture has developed expectation for. So it's important for us to think about that. Is it the most important thing? Of course not. It's not the most important thing, but it's an opportunity for us to connect in a meaningful way to people that have expectations that they're dealing with 6 days a week. They're not going and getting warm water with brown crayon dipped in it. They're going to get the real deal. So it's important for us to think about that and be hospitable. So becoming an organization that inserts itself into the flow. Hub 757 up in Chesapeake is also a child care center, but it's also Hub 757. 757, by the way, is their area code. So they are an event center using the building in the evenings. They are a child care center using the building during the daytimes. Separate entry points in case they have conflicts. It's also a building that serves a congregation of about 1,000 people. So this is a church, this is a building that is used all the time. It doesn't always make sense to do a pre-K center. It doesn't always make sense to do an event center. You may already have that in your community. It may not make any sense. A market study needs to be done. I'll let Eric talk about that. In Annapolis, it made sense to do an athletic and fitness center. Annapolis Area Christian School, they built 3 gymnasiums. They built a large lacrosse field house. They built a swimming pool, a student union for their high school kids. This building is largely paid for by the club use that they have during the off times that the school is not using it. The mortgage is paid for by club use. So financially, they're carried by the non-school activities that go on in this building. And it's a way to create flow. It's a way to create an awareness to the community. Athletics and fitness, too, can be done at a variety of different levels. I've seen churches before take a space like this third place space and have a special closet for interlocking mats and hold Zumba classes for the moms. I've seen that work really, really well, where they just invite the moms from the neighborhood to come in. Instead of going down to Curves or some of the other ones, they come instead to the church at the invitation of the moms that are in the church to be able to get their kids. Sometimes it works out really well, too. That same church I told you in Olathe, the Nazarene church that does the Friday night concert series, they also have Zumba classes in their lobby space right next door to their coffee bar, which is a juice bar when they're holding the classes, right next door to a gigantic glass wall that they can look into and see their kids in a McDonald's type of playland where they've got people set up to care for their kids while they're doing the exercise stuff. That's an outreach specifically done to reach unchurched moms in that neighborhood. And that neighborhood is filled with them. They're all starter homes around that area. So you can do it at a variety of different levels. Senior care is another one. Senior care nowadays, people are looking for daytime alternatives for seniors, setting up space that can be used for that sort of thing. Education centers. Churches can be used as places to hold those kinds of events, not just for church-type education, but non-church type of things. Performing arts is another. This is one that we did in Olathe, Kansas. Not Olathe, Kansas. This is done in Hillsboro. This is Tabor College, but they also hold church in this facility as well. It happens to be a space that works really, really well. It's designed for music and theatrical. You can see those panels on the wall. Those panels flip around and change the reverb time of the room so that they can hold music or theatrical events depending on the reverb requirement for the room. It also turns out to be a really dynamic space for the Mennonite church to hold their events there as well. Entrepreneurial centers. This is a building that we did in Salt Lake City, Utah, 19,000 square feet. It was done as a missions outreach center. Now, its primary sustainability concept is built around the idea of doing office. You know, you've seen these workplace centers where you go and lease office space for periods of time during the week. You can lease a little, you can lease a lot. It's also the birthplace of two churches that are currently being birthed out of the training center inside the entrepreneurial center. And that was their mission from the get-go, is we want to provide a place that's double-purposed. And now the people that are in these churches are going and leasing space and infiltrating during the week with the people that are non-churched. So it's blurring the lines between church and non-church. That's how they do it.